This is the story of Volkswagen, the car company that started by the order of Adolf Hitler to produce cheap vehicles for families but ended up manufacturing military vehicles during World War II. An organization whose officials allegedly spied on their workers and even had them tortured. A vehicle manufacturer that has one of the biggest corporate scandals of history in its records. Volkswagen is a German motor vehicle company headquartered in Wolfsburg, Germany. It was established in 1937 by the German Labor Front, a Nazi organization under the control of Adolf Hitler. Back then, in the early 1930s, having a car was a luxury and only one German out of 50 could afford a car. Most people owned motorcycles. Therefore, alongside the campaign's main projects to build a network of motorways and limited access highways across Germany, Hitler initiated a side project to develop and mass-produce an affordable vehicle that cost as much as a motorcycle and was just as speedy. It was later to be called Volkswagen, or People's Car. Suitable for families, it was supposed to have room for 2 adults and 3 children. The idea of this people's car was not so innovative. Several other engineers and companies in Germany and Czechoslovakia had already attempted to build a car like that before. It soon turned out to be impossible to manufacture and distribute such a car for such a low price. To solve this problem, Hitler called in the Austrian-German engineer Ferdinand Porsche. Porsche, who was a well-known designer for high-end vehicles and race cars, had been trying for years to get a manufacturer interested in a small car suitable for families. Hitler chose to sponsor him. Porsche already had his designs at hand for a Beetle-shaped car with torsion bar suspension. Hitler added some features such as an air-cooled engine. Prototypes of the car, initially known as the KDF wagon, appeared from 1938 onwards. Wagon means car and KDF stands for Kraft durch Freude, which means strength through joy. In 1938, in a Nazi rally, the Führer declared, "It is for the broad masses that this car has been built. Its purpose is to answer their transportation needs, and it is intended to give them joy." The idea was that German families could buy the car through a savings scheme in which thousands of people eventually participated. The motto was, 5 marks a week you must set aside, if in your own car you wish to ride. However, soon after the car was displayed for the first time at the Berlin Motor Show in 1939, World War II commenced and Volkswagen halted its production. None of the participants in the savings scheme ever received the car. As it was expected, war changed the company's production to military vehicles. Volkswagen's most common wartime model was the Type 82 Kübelwagen, or the bucket car. It was a utility vehicle. During the war, Volkswagen used slave labor from the concentration camps to manufacture its vehicles. About 80% of Volkswagen's wartime workforce were slaves. For this, later on, in 1998, a lawsuit was filed against Volkswagen for which it would set up a voluntary restitution fund. In 1945, the year that Allies occupied Germany, KDF Stadt, now known as Wolfsburg, and the factory were heavily bombarded. Since Wolfsburg was occupied by Britain, the British Army officer, Major Yvonne Hurst, seized control over the factory. When one of the factory's wartime KDF wagon cars was taken to the factory for repairs, Hurst had it painted green and exhibited it to the British Army headquarters. Consequently, the British Army placed an order for 20,000 cars to meet its own needs running post-war Germany. However, there were some crucial problems. Due to the bombing, production facilities had been awfully damaged and some car parts were unavailable. There was also a refugee crisis. Hurst overcame the challenge with the help of his German assistant, Heinrich Nordhoff, who later went on to run the Wolfsburg facility after the military government ended in 1949. The first few hundred cars went to the British personnel. Some of them took their Beetles back to the United Kingdom once they were demobilized. It was shortly after the Second World War that the town and the car changed their names from KDF Stadt and KDF Wagen to Wolfsburg and Volkswagen. The production gradually increased, but it was still unclear what was to become of the factory. It was offered to representatives from American, Australian, British, and French motor vehicle industries, but they all rejected it, claiming the car was unattractive, ugly, and noisy. Thus, Volkswagen was left to rebuild itself under Nordhoff's leadership. Heinrich Nordhoff had overseen the production of civilian and military vehicles in the 1930s and 1940s. He decided to pursue the one-model policy, the Beetle sedan. Only 2 other models had been introduced prior to his death in 1968, the Volkswagen Type 2 commercial vehicle and the Volkswagen carmaker sports car. Throughout the 1950s, many Volkswagens were imported and sold in a number of countries such as the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Brazil. In 1949, the first year they were exhibited in the US, they only sold 2 units. In April of 1955, Volkswagen of America was formed to standardize sales and services in the United States. As a result, production of Type 1 Volkswagen Beetles escalated dramatically. In Canada, Volkswagen were seen for the first time at the Canadian National Exhibition in the August of 1952 and were received enthusiastically. The imports for UK initially started with the cars brought home by soldiers returning from Germany and had expanded since then. In 1959, Volkswagen launched production at a plant near Sao Paulo in Brazil. During the time of Brazil's military dictatorship in 1970s, Volkswagen officials of the factory in Brazil were accused of spying on workers and informing police about oppositional activities. Following that, mass arrests occurred and some Volkswagen employees were even tortured. Even though some Volkswagen workers traveled to Wolfsburg to inform the CEO in person, the company stayed silent about the persecution of its workers. It was not until 2017 that Volkswagen commissioned an expert review of this incident. Despite the fact that the car was becoming outdated during the 1960s and early 1970s, American exports, innovative advertising, and a flourishing reputation for reliability helped production figures surpass the levels of the previous record holder, the Ford Model T. By 1973, Volkswagen total production was over 16 million, and they were able to claim the world production record for the most produced single model of a car in history. In the 21st century, Volkswagen caused one of the costliest corporate scandals ever. Before we elaborate more on that, please support us with your likes and shares if you have enjoyed the video so far. Before long, Volkswagen range of cars became as various as other large European car makers. The first Volkswagen Golf was produced in 1947, and there has been 8 generations of the Golf since then. Volkswagen Golf has been the linchpin of the Volkswagen collection since its introduction. It's also been the mechanical basis for several other cars of the company. Throughout the 1980s, Volkswagen's sales in the United States and Canada declined strikingly. The launch of the second generation Golf, GTI, and Jetta models helps Volkswagen briefly. In 1994, Volkswagen unveiled a retro-themed concept car with a resemblance to the original Beetle based on the platform of the Polo, a 3-doored earlier model launched in 1975. Volkswagen began introducing an array of new models after Bernd Piquet-Schreider became its group's CEO and responsible for all group brands in 2002. A little over a decade later, Volkswagen had its massive scandal for cheating on diesel emissions tests. It was in September 2015 that the US Environmental Protection Agency found out Volkswagen had violated the Clean Air Act in hundreds of thousands of vehicles. The vehicles were equipped with defeat devices in the form of a computer software, which were designed to cheat on federal emissions tests. It cost the company over $33 billion in vehicle refits and regulatory fines. Later on in 2017, the company declaimed that its goal is to launch at least 30 electric vehicle models by the end of 2025. Then again in 2021, the company announced that it would stop developing new internal combustion engines, although it would keep tweaking existing engines to comply with the stricter emission rules. Today, Volkswagen is the founding and namesake member of the Volkswagen Group, a large international corporation in charge of multiple car and truck brands, including Audi, Porsche, Lamborghini, Bugatti, Bentley, and a number of others. Volkswagen Group's global headquarters are located in Volkswagen historic home of Wolfsburg, Germany. Volkswagen has factories in many parts of the world, manufacturing or assembling vehicles for local markets. It is now one of the most well-organized labor-represented companies in the world. That was the story of Volkswagen. Watch the next video on how Lamborghini was made.